Hey folks, I'm International Master Kostya Kavutsky, and welcome to my new course for Chess University, Chess Tactics 101. In this course, I aim to lay out the foundations for what it takes to become a strong tactical player. Chess tactics are a really fundamental part of the game, and they're what makes the game dynamic and, in many cases, fun to play. In my opinion, becoming a strong tactical player first requires one to look at a lot of games and see a lot of examples and common tactical themes, and then try to build up their skills by solving hundreds and hundreds, and then eventually thousands of tactical exercises to really train your pattern recognition and train your ability to find strong moves. In this course, we'll start off with a video covering how to identify key tactical elements in the position, things like unprotected pieces and potential checks to the king. And then we'll move on to covering some of the most important tactical motifs. My goal is not only to introduce these tactical motifs, but also break them down and try to explain what makes them work and in what kind of situations should one look for specific tactics. Each video is packed full of examples, and after each video I've included some exercises because becoming a strong tactical player is not just about learning the ideas, but putting them into practice and trying to find the right idea over the board. Therefore, I encourage everyone who watches this video to really input their full effort into the course. Throughout the videos, I give many opportunities for students to pause the video and try to solve the position at hand. And while I know that most players don't do this or are too lazy to do so, I really have to urge you guys to pause the video, think for yourselves, and try to find the best move in each position. This is truly the way to get the most out of this course and build up your ability in the long run. At the end of the course, I've written up a detailed study guide of everything we cover, all the terms we mention, and I've also provided a list of recommended training books and other resources for you to continue building up your skills once you're done watching the videos. With that, I'd like to show two examples that really highlight the importance of tactics in chess. In our first game, which comes from one of the great players of the past, Dr. Sigbert Tarrasch, here Tarrasch really shows the power of playing tactically, playing with energy, creating threats on every move, and in particular, looking for key forcing moves. Now, if you haven't heard that term before, a forcing move is one of the most important elements when it comes to tactics. Forcing moves are any moves that limit the amount of replies that your opponent has. So the first very common examples include checks, you have to respond to a check, and captures. If you capture one of your opponent's pieces, this usually limits their reply to either recapturing or trying to create some kind of counter threat. But it's not just checks and captures. In fact, any kind of threat can be considered a forcing move. For instance, if you threaten to give checkmate, or if you threaten one of your opponent's pieces. These are also considered to be basic examples of forcing moves. Well, enough talking, let's get to the game. So here playing white, Tarrasch started on a combination here that ends up winning him material. But we'll see that this actually goes quite deep and all the way into the endgame. Okay, well in this position he played the move bishop takes c6, capturing the knight and initiating the sequence of forcing moves. Black replied bishop takes c6, and now white grabbed the pawn on e5, forcing black to recapture. White traded queens on d8, black recaptured here too, and finally white took the pawn on e5, winning a pawn in the process. Now at this point, black being down a pawn, found a way to regain his material, utilizing a tactical idea starting with bishop takes e4. The point of this move is that if white takes the bishop, black recaptures with the knight, and now if white was to recapture with the rook, at the end of the line black would have rook d1 check followed by a back rank mate. Going back to this position, it was also possible for black to take with the knight. With the same idea as after knight takes e4, black can take back with the bishop, and this bishop will be immune to capture, as this would again allow rook to d1 checkmate at the end of the line. However, after knight takes e4, white could first grab the bishop on c6, black would be obliged to recapture, and then after knight takes e4, white would emerge with a piece up. So this simply wouldn't work for black. But black took with the bishop, Tarrasch captured the bishop on e4, knight takes e4, And here, white was not able to take the knight in view of the rook d1 mate threat, but he came up with a very strong tactical move that put his opponent under a lot of pressure. And that move was knight to d3. Not only does white keep the attack on black's knight, he also opens up the rook to attack black's bishop, meaning that black's pieces are lined up here in what we call a skewer. But not only that, he also blocked black's only threat in the position. So this move, knight d3, was definitely a multi-purpose move, also blocking the rook from being able to reach the d1 square. Now black has some issues here because he has two pieces hanging along the e-file. So he played the only sensible move, f5, defending the knight. And here white continues to put pressure, now with f3. So if this knight moves away, for example knight to c5, white can safely grab the bishop on e7 and win a piece. So instead black continues to play forcefully himself, and he played the move bishop c5 check. Well, white grabbed the bishop on c5, and black recaptured. And now at this moment it would seem that black has simply gotten out of the woods. Material has remained equal, and white doesn't particularly have any kind of advantage here, except the advantage of being on the move. It's white's turn, and if he continues to play actively, well, maybe he might be able to win some material. And that's exactly what Tarrasch was able to find. If you guys would like, I'd encourage you to pause the video here and try to figure out the best way for white forward to actually end up winning material here by force and thus winning the game. Well, white played the move bishop to g5. This seems like a nice active move, forcing in that it's attacking the rook, but white has also created a second threat here, and that is to play the move bishop to e7, with a double attack against black's rook on f8, and this potentially hanging knight on c5. So if black played a move like rook de8, this would not stop white's plans, bishop e7 would be played, and next move white is either going to capture the rook or capture the knight and win the game. So instead black played rook to d5, a move that makes a lot of sense as he's defending the knight in advance. Well, Tarrasch played bishop to e7 anyway. Then after the move rook e8, we have this attack on the knight. Black has one rook defending the knight, and every strong tactical player instinctively can realize that if only one of your opponent's pieces is defending another piece, then that piece is also going to be vulnerable to attack. And here after the move c4, black simply ran out of good moves. This knight on c5 is still under attack. Now the rook is under attack, and if this rook moves away, white will be able to capture the knight for free. Instead, black could also give up his rook on e8 for white's bishop in order to take this piece off the board, but after rook takes e7, white would be up the exchange and would have a winning endgame. So in this position, after the move c4, black resigned to his superior opponent. So this game really shows the importance of playing active, forcing moves and trying to create threats in a position where you have the initiative. Starting back from the key moment, every one of white's moves from here was either a capture or a threat to capture one of black's pieces. We first played bishop takes c6, removing one of the defenders of the e5 pawn. Black recaptured, then white took the pawn on e5, first after trading queens. And then once black tried to win back the pawn with bishop takes e4, white continued to play with active moves, first grabbing knight takes e4, and then playing knight d3, setting up the key skewer that black eventually was not able to get out of. f5 continued, white played f3, reigniting the threat. Bishop c5 check, the only way to get out of the potential tactic. White grabbed the bishop on c5, black recaptured, and now started the final tactical sequence that ended up winning Tarrasch the game. Bishop g5 and bishop e7. Finally leading to this last position where white ends the game with c4, dislodging black's rook from d5 and forcing black to give up material and give up the game. This game is not particularly complicated to understand. White simply made threats on every move until black was unable to cope. But I do love its simplicity in that it just, again, stresses the importance of looking for those active forcing moves. Our next example here is one of the most beautiful combinations I've seen in chess. This game was played by the great world champion Alexander Alekhine. And here playing with white, Alekhine really launched a beautiful combination, which is all the more impressive considering that it took place in a blindfold simul. meaning not only was he playing multiple games at a time, he was playing them all without seeing any of the boards at hand, making this feat truly impressive. Well, okay, in this position, the combination started with a pretty fascinating move, knight to f7. With this move, white definitely hangs a knight and black can take king takes f7 as he did in the game, but this move was not just a sacrifice in thin air. White did create a threat, threatening to take the queen and also threatening to take the e6 pawn. So black captured, king takes f7, and here comes the real point of white's combination, an absolutely gorgeous queen sacrifice. That's right, queen takes e6 check. Basically one of the most forcing moves that's ever been played. Not only is white capturing a pawn with check, he's also sacrificing his queen in the process. Well, what's the idea? After queen takes e6, in the event of king takes e6, white has dragged the king out into the open, and after the move knight to g5, we have an amazing checkmate on the board. All of black's escape squares are covered, and this knight is not only checking the king, but also covering the f7 square, and black has run out of moves. Well, in the game after queen takes e6, black was not obliged to capture the queen and had a choice of other moves, but neither of these moves would work out. After king to f8, white continued knight to g5, threatening queen to f7. That's very, very difficult to meet. Black can play knight to e5, but this would only delay the checkmate for so long. White can simply capture the knight and reinstate the threat of queen f7 checkmate. Instead, after king f7, black decided to play king to g6, trying to survive for as long as possible. And Alekhine found a very, very nice mate in two moves here. Now, I would say this isn't an obvious mate in two, but if you'd like, you can pause the video and try to figure it out for yourselves. White to play and checkmate in two moves. Okay, well, there's lots of ways to give mate here, but there's only one way to give mate in a short two moves. One of the ways that looks tempting is to play bishop takes f5 check. This would force king to h5, and then after g4, white is going to give mate here. Black is forced to play knight takes g4, and after bishop takes g4, we finally have a checkmate on the board. Now this would be a mate in 3, but Alekhine found a really nice mate in 2, starting with the key move g4. Normally we wouldn't see a move that's not a check, that starts a mate in 2 combination, but after this amazing move g4, black simply has no defense and is getting checkmated on the next move. The main threat is to play bishop takes f5, and now we have taken away the h5 square from black's king, but we're also threatening the move knight to h4, which is also a checkmate in this position. Black simply has no defense and no way to get out of this one. If he tries h6, creating a escape square on h7, white can play bishop takes f5 anyway and cover that square and give mate. Black, of course, cannot take the pawn with either of his pieces, as both the pawn on f5 and the knight on f6 are both pinned. And in the game, black tried the only way to stop bishop f5 checkmate, and that is with the move bishop to e4. But as I mentioned, white had a second mate threat in the position, and after knight h4, the game was over. A really, really amazing finish. Now, going back to the start of this brilliant combination, I would like to stress a key point here. In order to find an amazing combination like this, it doesn't require you to be a genius. In fact, very few chess players start out the game as being able to find these amazing types of ideas. What most players go through is the process of simply developing their tactical ability. It starts with seeing many different examples of common tactics, followed by solving many different examples of the same tactics. And over time, with a lot of study and a lot of practice, one can really build up their tactical vision to be able to find really nice combinations. With that, I'd like to invite you guys to check out the rest of the course, and I'll see you on the other side. Take care.